I knew the war by its smells long before I learned its songs. Roasted barley and hot pitch on the walls, bronze warmed by hands, sweat brewed in leather, and the river's wet breath when the wind turned inland. I was 19 when the ships came, black beaks grinning along the shore like a necklace of teeth. From the citadel of Ilios we watched their masts grow from a dark rumor into a forest. And I told myself the forest would wither when spring burned the leaves from it. But spring came, and with it more sails, and the forest did not wither. It learned our name and circled it like a wolf. I am Deepan, son of a potter, husband to a weaver whose wrists move like swallows. The gods never asked my counsel, but war made me a man they recognized. I stood my turns on the battlements and learned to read the plain the way my father read clay. Is it ready? Will it crack? The Greeks were good at making cracks. They found them in our courage and in the mortar between stones, in the way a man's voice thins after a night without sleep. The first year the war was all brightness and brass. Our Prince Hector strode like a wall taller than our walls, and when he smiled the men near him stood straighter. We believed a city with a Hector could not fall, just as a jar with a true round cannot wobble. The Greeks sent champions to our gates, and we sent Hector or one of our best, and the plain drank the shine of their deeds until dusk. Our women watched from the towers and sent us down food sweet with herbs, and the priests swung their censers until the smoke lay like a silk scarf over the altars. We thought the gods were listening. Perhaps they were, and simply preferred long stories. Year folded into year. We learned the names of our enemies as if they were distant cousins. Odysseus with the fox's eyes, big Ajax who fought like a storm, Menelaus coughing rage, a young man named Achilles whose anger drove a wedge into daylight. Sometimes they quarreled among themselves and withdrew, sulking behind their ditch, and we dared to laugh in the markets. Those were good days when music floated from doorways and the river wore bracelets of sun, and boys chased dogs along the lanes as if a decade were still a thing they could spend like a copper coin. Then a shout would rise from the seaward wall, and we would run with our shields, and good days became a shirt we had forgotten to take off before battle, too fine to wear into blood. I remember one morning of silver cloud when the Lycians came to our aid, Sarpedon riding under a lion-painted shield, Glaucus with his long stride. They spoke a Greek so soft it felt like a cousin of our tongue. Their arrival made our city taller by a handspan. We feasted them in the courtyards and put garlands on their helmets, and their laughter tangled with ours like vines. For a season the war turned its face aside and showed us its gentler cheek. We pushed the Greeks back to their ships. Flames clung to the hulls. A wind rose off the sea carrying the smell of fear. I can still hear Hector's shout there, clear as poured water. Drive them into their wet houses! A spear grazed my shoulder, and the pain felt honest, as if the world and I were finally speaking the same language. Then Achilles returned, and the world forgot how to speak. He moved through us like a knife through warm bread. Men I knew only by their laughter became meat on the sand. I watched him drive Hector around the city 3 times, the dust in sheets, our prince's breath ragged as torn cloth. When Hector fell, a sound went up from Troy that did not belong to humans. It belonged to the womb before the child is placed upon the earth. I put my forehead to the stone and breathed dust, because it was easier than air. After that, everything dimmed. Priam's beard seemed whiter each dawn. Our mothers tied their hair back with old strings and stopped singing while they ground the grain. We patched the walls where the stones had forgotten to hold each other, and we told lies soft as milk to our children. I brought home a shard of Hector's broken spear and set it above our door as if wood could guard a house from what stalked outside it. Nights grew long even when the moon was fat. The Greeks fought less and watched more, like men who have decided not to gamble until they have marked the cards. The horse came when the wind was drunk with summer. I had the dawn watch on the southern tower and first saw it as a lump of shadow near the shore, a thing too dark for day. When the light matured it revealed itself. A wooden beast as tall as our gates, belly round, back arched, head like the god of horses with eyes that did not blink. The camp beyond it lay strangely quiet, lines of ash where tents had been, the sea making a low animal sound to itself. Our scouts ran along the beach and returned with dust for news. The ships were gone. "They have lifted their curse?" said a man beside me and laughed. But his laugh was a bone without meat. We argued until our throats were dry. Some said burn it, some said drag it inside and crown it with flowers. A few said leave it to the gulls and the rain. Our priest Laocoon hurled a spear that thudded into the horse's side with a hollow sound like breath held too long. "Fear the Greeks even when they give gifts," he cried. Then the sea showed its own opinion. 2 serpents shouldered out of the surf red as fresh wine, their crests hissing, and took Laocoon and his sons in ropes of muscle. We stood like children, and the gods wrote an argument none of us could answer. My legs felt unstitched. When the serpents slid back into the sea's sleeve, silence fell like ash. We broke the wall to bring the horse in. I use we because no one is innocent in a city. Even those who shouted against it later still lent their eyes and breath to the crowd that day. Ropes bit our palms. The wheels screamed. My own wife, Xantha, watched from a window with our son on her hip, and I wanted her to smile because I needed to believe in endings that did not cut. "Look," I called, pointing, and she lifted the boy's hand in a wave. The horse rolled over the stones and stood in the square like a god that has found a new altar. Night fell warm and itchy with celebration. The wine was like a door left open. We stepped through. People sang themselves young again. The fires poured honey on our streets. Priam spoke blessings until his voice wore thin. I drank too much and then less because a little place in my chest remained cold and paid attention. Xantha tugged my sleeve. "Come home," she said, soft. "Let the city be loud without us." I wanted to be the man who listened quickly. Instead I said, "I will make one more round of the walls, just to be sure." She touched my cheek. "Deep Han," she said, and in that word put 10 years of knowing. I kissed my son's head and tasted salt. The night crooked its finger. On my circuit I heard a sound like a wooden throat clearing. Just a settling, I told myself, but the cold place in me grew. I found my friend Anticles asleep by the north gate, and kicked his foot gently. "Up," I said, "or I'll tell the captain you were dreaming of his wife." He grinned and wiped wine from his beard, then cocked his head. "Do you hear that?" We listened. The city's sleep muttered. The horse said nothing. The river whispered to its own stones. "Wind in the timbers," he decided, and lay back down. I was outside the palace court when the first scream split the silk of the night. Another followed, thinner like a thread breaking. Then the horse vomited Greeks. They poured from its belly like a judgment, and the gates they had marked for opening flew wide to welcome the fleet that had crept back on cat feet. Darkness launched men as day launches birds. Fire kissed the rooftops as if it had been waiting for this marriage for 10 years. I ran until I found steel, and I made steel busy. It is strange what the body remembers when the mind becomes a stranger. The weight of the shield's rim, the taste of iron at the back of the throat, the way a dying man tries to pull the earth over himself as if it were a blanket. I reached my street through smoke that walked upright. The house's door gaped, the lintel black with new soot. In the courtyard Xantha stood with our boy behind her, a kitchen knife in her hand that would have been funny on another night. A Greek came in with his eyes shining like a dog's. I pushed him back into the wall so hard the wall apologized, and he slid to the ground with his mouth learning a new shape. "Go," I told her, "to the temple. Take the lane behind the potters. Keep to shadow." She touched my wrist. "And you?" "I am a hinge," I said, not knowing what I meant until I said it. A hinge works until the door closes. They ran. I kept being a hinge. Men are doors and hinges and sometimes wind. The street filled with those who did not belong to it. We made it ours for a breath and then lost it. I fell backwards over a jar, felt the clay break against my spine, and thought absurdly of my father's wheel. A spear found my thigh. The pain stepped into me like a guest who means to stay. I crawled, dragged, stood, found my feet again because they were looking for me. The world became small. A face, a blade, a shout. Larger. A roof on fire, a tower thinking about falling. Small again. A hand clutching my ankle, a child's cry, my name or a word that rhymed with it. At the temple of Athena the floor was slick with hope and blood. The goddess looked on with eyes polished to indifference. My wife's hair appeared like a fallen standard among the crowd. I found her. It was like finding the river in a storm, and put our boy into the lap of the statue, which offered stone comfort. "Stay," I said, lying to all three of us. "The gods will not let their house burn. All gods permit kindling when men are plentiful and wood is wet." Flames tested the eaves as if they were bread. Smoke massed like a new wall. I ran again because motion felt like prayer. In the palace court I saw Priam cut down at the altar, old blood meeting new. I saw Cassandra laughing like a broken lyre. I saw Aeneas carrying his father through a door of fire, and for a heartbeat believed in roads that continue even where maps go blind. I saw the horse standing in the square as if innocence were carved into its flanks. I wanted to blame its wood for the knives in our throats. Would never ask to be a god. Dawn came late, sulky, with ash on its shoulders. The city lay around me, learning a new language made of ash and nail. Fires folded themselves into sleep. The Greeks walked through our streets like men in a market choosing olives. From the temple I heard a child crying and a woman's voice whispering the same word over and over until it was only breath. My spear was gone. My knee throbbed. I leaned against a wall that had hidden me as a boy when I stole figs, and felt the stone warm from the fire's passing. Someone took my arm, not unkindly. He was a Greek with a beard the color of dust and a scar like a river on his cheek. "You fought well," he said in a voice worn thin. "Sit." He pushed me to the step and tore cloth from my leg. I wanted to hate him very cleanly. Instead I hated him like mud, sticking everywhere and under my nails. He worked with a care that made me wish he would be clumsy. "Why?" I asked, though I did not know which why I meant. "Because we have finished fighting," he said, and tied the bandage as if he were binding a jar for travel. "For an hour, at least." From the hill I saw the sea packed with ships again, but now they seemed like birds heavy with grain, beaks filled with our sons and daughters, our gods wrapped in cloth, our songs folded into bundles. Smoke curled from the citadel where the wind played with it as a cat plays with string. If the gods had planned this, they had planned it intricately with a taste for edges. I am a Trojan and will be until the last ash finds the last corner and decides to rest there. The city is not walls, we proved that at the gates. It is not princes, we proved that at the chariot. A city is hands passing water up a line, a woman's voice teaching a child a word for sky, a pot turned on a wheel so true it sings when tapped. The Greeks can take our stones and sell our names, but they cannot take the way Xantha's wrist moves when she knots a thread. They cannot take the river's habit of talking to itself near the bend, or the secret in the taste of our barley when it is boiled slowly in a clay pot that has known only our fire. When I close my eyes, I see two Troys. One is the city that burned, the one strangers will tell stories about while poking at their meat with knives. The other is the city that keeps a small fire where no wind can find it. In that city, Hector still holds a sleepy child, and Priam's hand is not empty, and our horse is only a horse, old and patient, that refuses to be anything but wood. In that city, I am a man who learned to be a hinge and then learned to be a door, and finally learned to be the wind that moves through both, carrying the last bright ash of a home into the future where someone will breathe it in and say, "I know this scent," and understand. If you ask me what the war taught, I will not speak of glory. Glory is a word men use when they stand far from heat. I will say this: a city's truest walls are made where hands meet. We broke our wall to welcome a gift. We should have made a wall of listening instead, a place where one voice saying no could not be drowned by drums and gods. Remember us that way if you can, not as a caution carved on a wooden belly, but as people who loved the same bread, the same river, the same purple in the dusk so much that we thought it would love us back. We were wrong about that. The dusk prefers everyone equally. Tonight I will sleep if the gods allow it. I will hold my son between smoke and wind. If the horse breathes in my dreams, I will tell it kindly to be what it was before men climbed into it. Timber that shaded shepherds, timber that creaked in the rain, timber that knew nothing of tricks. In the morning we will begin the small work, To teach the mouth to say our city's name the way it should be said, warm, rounded, with the last syllable held a heartbeat longer, as if the world itself were reluctant to let it go.